She was thrown out by her husband after he beat her until she could barely stand. Then a Mafia boss said, "You are coming with me." The humid August night pressed down on New York like a wet blanket, the air thick enough to taste, distant thunder rumbling over the East River like a warning nobody heeded. Inside Conti's, the mahogany bar gleamed under soft amber light. Candlelit tables dotted the dining room, each one occupied by people who had never counted their money in a bathroom stall. The smell of garlic and basil hung heavy in the air, mingling with the leather of expensive chairs and the faint sweetness of aged wine. The white marble floor reflected the glow of the chandeliers above like a perfectly polished mirror. At 8:13 p.m., the glass door swung open. A woman stumbled through it like a puppet with its strings cut. Her left eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it a deep purple that darkened into black at the edges. Fingerprint bruises wrapped around her pale throat, each one a separate scream she had not made. Blood dripped from a split lip onto the white marble floor, drop by drop, marking her path like a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to hell. Her name was Lena Winters. She was 27 years old but looked decades older. Her dark hair, once long and thick, now hung limp and matted against her shoulders. She wore a torn denim jacket over a stained white shirt, and her hands trembled as she gripped the bar. In her right pocket, crumpled so tightly it had begun to tear, was $200. Everything she owned in this world. She did not see the man in the corner booth. He saw her. Rafael Conti sat with his back against the wall, a position he had never abandoned in 39 years of living. His dark hair silvered at the temples, his face carved from granite and scar tissue, a pale line running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone like a blade had once tried to split him open and failed. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, the white shirt beneath it open at the collar, revealing the edge of a tattoo across his chest, old Italian words nobody was allowed to ask about. A gold watch caught the candlelight on his left wrist. His eyes, storm gray and penetrating, were fixed on the woman collapsing against his bar. Beside him sat Vinny and Nino, his lieutenants for the past 12 and 15 years respectively. Vinny was thick-shouldered, scarred across both knuckles, his suit black and fitted. Nino was leaner, older, his eyes constantly moving like a man who had learned a long time ago that death comes quietly. They had been discussing a shipment, but the words died in Vinny's mouth. Rafael did not move. His hand reached down, and both men's hands went immediately to the weapons at their sides, a reflex so practiced it was like breathing. But Rafael raised one hand, a single gesture that said wait, and the room held its breath like a creature sensing the approach of something dangerous. The prayer card fell from Lena's jacket pocket as she reached for the bar to keep herself upright. It fluttered down, small and worn, the image on it faded from 1,000 prayers and 1,000 tears. The card landed face up on the blood-spotted marble. A saint nobody important, prayers to a God who apparently did not listen. Rafael stood. His $3,000 shoes clicked on the marble floor, each step measured, unhurried, the walk of a man who had never needed to rush because the world rearranged itself around him. He was 6'1", broad-shouldered, and when he moved through his restaurant, the air seemed to part for him the way water parts for a blade. The other diners felt him pass and instinctively turned away, a learned skill among people who valued their lives. He stopped in front of her. He did not touch her. He simply stood there and looked at her face, really looked, the way a person looks at a painting in a museum and tries to understand what suffering created it. Her one visible eye was green, a pale shade like sea glass worn smooth by 1,000 storms. Even swollen, even broken, there was something in that eye that had not yet surrendered. "You are coming with me," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, the kind of voice that had ended arguments and started wars. It was not a question. It was not even a request. It was a statement of fact, the way a man might say the sun rises or the heart beats. Lena's breathing came in short, sharp gasps. She looked at him but did not seem to see him, as if her brain was still half trapped in the apartment, still half convinced the next blow was coming. "I cannot," she whispered, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "I have no money. I have nothing. I am nobody." The word hung in the air between them. Rafael bent down and picked up the prayer card, holding it between his thumb and finger, studying it for a moment before sliding it into her jacket pocket. His hand brushed the torn fabric, and something shifted in his chest, something cold and ancient and dangerous. "Then you are coming with me," he said again, and this time the finality in those words was absolute. Vinny and Nino exchanged a look neither had exchanged in 15 years. They knew what this meant. They knew Rafael Conti. They knew that he did not reach out to broken women. He did not offer sanctuary. He did not lower his guard. The reputation that had kept him alive for 4 decades was built on the premise that he belonged to nobody and nobody belonged to him. Except now, standing in his restaurant with blood on his floor and thunder moving across the sky outside, something had changed. What Lena did not know, what she could not possibly have known as she stood there with her trembling hands and her green eye filled with terror, was that 3 days earlier she had saved a life. She had pulled a small boy, 7 years old with dark curly hair and a backpack shaped like a dinosaur, away from the path of a delivery truck outside a school on the Upper East Side. She had not known who the boy was. She had not known that his name was Oliver Conti. She had not known that he belonged to the most powerful man in New York. And she had no idea that in exactly 12 days, her entire world was about to be torn apart by someone else, someone who had been moving in the shadows for months, someone whose hatred was about to consume everything she had left to lose. But for now, in this moment, Raphael extended his hand to her. "Come," he said, and for the first time in what felt like forever, someone was offering her a place to stand. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Your support means everything to us. Now let us go back to the beginning, to understand how Lena Winters found herself broken and bleeding on the marble floor of a man whose name had the power to change everything. 3 days before Elena Voss collapsed bleeding onto marble, the August heat hung over New York like a blade wrapped in suffocating silk. The temperature had climbed to 94 degrees by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the air smelled of melting asphalt and exhaust fumes. PS 158 Elementary School on the Upper East Side was releasing its students in a tide of noise and color, yellow buses idling in a line, their engines rumbling like sleeping giants, children spilling out of doors in waves of laughter and shouting. Lena Winters stood near the cafeteria entrance where she worked part-time, for days a week, earning $11 an hour. She had just finished her shift, removing her hairnet and tucking it into her apron pocket. Her dark blonde hair, pulled back in a tight bun, was damp with sweat. She was 31 years old but looked closer to 45. The kind of face that had been worn down by specific and relentless hardship, not the softness of natural aging, but the sharp edges of survival. Her green eyes were still bright, though they had developed a permanent wariness, the look of someone who had learned long ago that the world does not offer mercy to people like her. She had $200 in her wallet. $200, and 17 creditors calling her phone 17 times a day. The math was not complicated. Her rent was $1,200. Her car payment was $280. Electricity, $150. Water, $60. Food for Emma, age 9, and Dylan, age 6, came to somewhere around $400, if she was careful. If she bought generic everything. If she taught them to drink powdered milk and eat beans from cans. She had been doing the calculation over and over since her husband Marcus died 8 months ago, a heart attack at 42, sudden and total, leaving her with 2 children and $85,000 in medical debt that the creditors had politely informed her, through their automated calls and their legal letters, would take her the rest of her natural life to repay. $200. It was August 12th. In 5 days, her car insurance would lapse. In 12 days, the foreclosure notice would expire, and the bank would begin the process of selling the apartment where she and her children had lived for 7 years. The apartment that still had Marcus's old fishing rods in the closet, still had his smell on one of the pillows that she could not bring herself to wash. She was thinking about this, about the number 12, about the house, about what it would mean to be homeless with 2 children in New York in September, when she heard the scream. It was a child's scream, but not the playful shriek of a child excited or pretending. This was different. This was pure terror. Lena's head snapped up. A small boy, perhaps 7 years old, with dark curly hair and a dinosaur-shaped backpack, had chased a rubber ball into the street. The ball had rolled from the sidewalk between two parked cars, and the boy, laughing 1 second before, had made the split-second decision that the ball was worth the risk. He had not looked. Children never do. The delivery truck was already there, barreling down the avenue at 30 miles per hour. Its brakes had failed. Later, the investigation would confirm this, and the driver was slamming his foot down, his face twisted in panic, but the truck did not slow. The horn wailed, a sound like a wounded animal, and the engine roared. Lena did not think. Thinking was a luxury she could not afford in that moment. She ran. Her shift-worn shoes slapped against the pavement. Her apron strings flew behind her. She closed the distance in 4 strides, reaching the boy just as the truck filled the entire width of the avenue. She did not grab his hand. She grabbed his backpack straps and yanked upward with everything she had, a lifting motion, hard and violent, pulling him backward and up as if she could throw him into the sky itself. The truck missed them by inches. The sound of impact was enormous. Metal crumpling like paper. Glass exploding. The truck hammered into a parked sedan with a force that lifted it halfway onto the sidewalk. The horn cut off abruptly. A cloud of dust and steam rose into the humid air. For one long moment, there was absolute silence. Then screaming. Teachers screaming. Children screaming. A security guard running toward them. Lena and the boy stood at the edge of the sidewalk, his backpack strapped still in her hands, both of them breathing in ragged gasps. His small body was shaking. Tears poured down his dark eyes. He was alive. He was alive because of her. "I have you," she whispered. "You are safe. You are safe now." A teacher rushed over, followed by the school principal, followed by the security guard. They were asking questions in urgent voices. Was he hurt? Was she hurt? They were looking at the truck, at the crushed sedan, at the distance between where the boy had been standing and where he was now. The principal's face had gone gray. "I am fine," Lena said. "I am okay." She was not okay. When she looked down at her hands, they were bleeding. The pavement had torn open the skin of her palms and her wrists. Small stones were embedded in her flesh. She could feel the sting of it, but distantly, as if it was happening to someone else. "We need to call an ambulance," the teacher said. "Your hands, you need medical attention." "No," Lena said. She pulled her hands away before anyone could look too closely. "I am fine." "Really? Just a scratch." The principal was calling 911. "The boy's parents," he was saying. "We need to contact the boy's parents immediately. The boy's name is Oliver Conti." "Oliver, that is the name in our system. His uncle was supposed to pick him up at 3:45. Does anyone know his uncle's number?" Lena did not hear the answer. She was already moving backward, away from the crowd, away from the growing sirens in the distance. She picked up her purse from where it lay near the cafeteria door. She did not know the boy's last name. She did not know anything about him except that he had a dinosaur backpack and that his laugh, before the fear, had been pure joy. She did not know that his name was Oliver Conti. She did not know that his mother was dead, that her name had been Maria, and that she had been the sister of the man who would, in exactly 12 days, change everything about Lena's life. That evening, Lena took the subway back to Queens. The Q train was packed, every seat taken, bodies pressed against bodies in the humid darkness. She stood near the doors, her hands wrapped in the paper towels from the school bathroom. She had not gone to the hospital, had not paid the $200 copay that she did not have, and she thought about the boy's weight in her hands. So light. Like lifting air. Like lifting someone's entire future. The studio apartment she shared with Anthony Marchetti was on the 4th floor of a building that had been ugly in 1974 and had only gotten worse. The elevator had been broken for 3 months. She climbed the stairs, listening to the sounds of televisions and arguing coming from behind closed doors, and when she reached their apartment, she knew immediately that something was wrong. Anthony was waiting inside. He was sitting in the dark, in the single armchair they owned, and the smell of beer and whiskey was thick in the air. There were 6 empty bottles on the coffee table. She had been gone for 7 hours. The shift had ended at 2:06 p.m. She had stayed for the rescue, for the chaos after the rescue, for the principal's questions and the security guard's statement. She was home now at 9:15 p.m. "Where the hell were you?" Anthony's voice was soft. "Quiet." This was worse than when he shouted. "I told you," she said. She set her purse down carefully, already calculating the fastest route to the bedroom. "I said I might be late. There was an incident at school." "An incident?" He stood up slowly. He was a large man, 6 feet 2 inches tall, with a kind of muscularity that came from obsession, from spending 3 hours a day in the gym because he needed to be bigger, stronger, more imposing than every other man in the room. He had been handsome once. Now his handsomeness had turned cruel, sharpened into something dangerous. "An incident." "A child," she said. Her voice was shaking. She hated that it was shaking. "There was a truck. I helped. It took longer than." He moved faster than she could follow. His hand closed around her throat. The wall came up behind her. She felt it strike her spine, felt the impact drive the air from her lungs. His fingers tightened. His face was inches from hers. She could smell the beer on his breath, could see the rage in his eyes, but underneath the rage, there was something else. There was the satisfaction of a man who had found permission to hurt someone, who had found an explanation that his own mind could accept. "Do not lie to me," he said. "You think I am stupid? You think I do not know?" She could not breathe. Black spots bloomed at the edges of her vision. "I am not," she gasped. He struck her across the face with his free hand. Her head snapped sideways. Her left eye exploded with pain. She tasted blood. "Please," she whispered. He released her throat and stepped backward. She fell to her knees, gasping, her hands on the cracked linoleum floor. She was coughing. Her eye was swelling shut. Her neck would show fingerprints by morning. She had bruises like this before, on her ribs from March, on her shoulders from May, a black eye in June that she had told her co-workers came from walking into a cabinet door. "I work," Anthony said, his voice low and reasonable, as if he was explaining something obvious to a child. "I work my ass off. I provide for you. For those brats of yours. And you repay me by doing whatever the hell you want all day and then coming home with stories about trucks and incidents. Do you think I believe that?" She did not answer. She knew from experience that any answer would be wrong. "You have another man," he said. It was not a question. "That is the only explanation. That is why you are late. That is why you smell like sweat and dirt. You are fucking someone else." "No," she whispered. "Anthony, no. I would never." He struck her again, backhanded this time, his knuckles catching her cheekbone. She fell sideways, her body hitting the radiator. The old metal was warm, and for a moment she pressed her forehead against it, seeking some kind of comfort in the heat. "Get up," he said. She did not move. "I said get up." She pulled herself to her feet using the radiator as an anchor. Her left eye was now swollen so badly that she could barely see out of it. Her right eye was filling with tears that she would not let fall. She had learned that crying made him angrier. "Go to the bathroom," he said. "Clean yourself up. You look pathetic." She obeyed. In the bathroom mirror, she saw a stranger, a woman with one eye purple and swollen, with blood dried on her lips and chin, with a throat decorated in fingerprints like a constellation of bruises. She looked like someone who had been thrown against a wall. Because she had been. This was the 4th time in 3 months. She had called the police twice, and both times Officer Frank Rizzo had arrived, Anthony's cousin, and both times the report had been filed and then filed away, into a drawer where reports about women like Lena went to disappear. She cleaned the blood from her face with trembling hands. She could feel her heartbeat in her eye socket, a hot throbbing that made her want to scream. She did not scream. She had learned that screaming made him come back. In the bedroom, she lay down fully clothed on top of the sheets and waited for morning. The apartment was silent except for the sound of Anthony's breathing in the living room, the occasional clink of another bottle being opened. She thought about the boy, about Oliver, about his dinosaur backpack and the weight of his body in her hands. She thought about the number 12, 12 days until the foreclosure. 12 days until everything was gone. What she did not know, what she could not possibly have known as she lay in the darkness with her swollen eye and her $200 and her collection of creditor notices, was that in a laboratory 5 blocks away, a security camera at PS 158 Elementary School had captured every second of what happened at 3:16 p.m. that afternoon. The angle was clear. The boy's face was visible. The moment of the rescue, frame by frame, was preserved in digital light. And at that exact moment, in a restaurant 42 blocks north with black tablecloths and servers in white gloves, a man named Rafael Conti was receiving a phone call that would set everything in motion. The humid August air pressed down like a wet blanket, thick enough to suffocate. Inside the 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, sweat beaded on the windows, condensing into rivers that dripped down the glass like tears. The kitchen was small, cramped, the kind of space where 2 people breathing in the same room felt like an invasion. Lena Winters stood in the doorway, still wearing her cleaning uniform from the office buildings downtown, a gray shirt with stains that wouldn't come out, despite 3 washings. She had come straight from her second job, the one that paid $13 an hour to scrub other people's desks while they slept in penthouses she would never see from the inside. Thunder rolled across the sky outside, low and ominous. Anthony Marchetti sat at the kitchen table with a woman Lena recognized but did not welcome knowing. Evelyn Blackwell. They had met twice before, both times in settings that made Lena's stomach tighten. Evelyn was tall, elegant in a way that looked like it cost money, a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Lena earned in 4 months, her dark hair swept up in a style that required a professional. Designer earrings caught the light. Everything about her radiated cold precision. "You are early," Anthony said, not looking up from his drink. "My boss let us leave early. The office closed for. We are discussing business," he said. His voice had shifted, taken on that edge she knew to fear. "Go to the bedroom." Lena did not move. She had learned to read the room, to measure the temperature of his anger. This felt different. This felt dangerous. Evelyn smiled. It was not a warm expression. "This must be Lena. Anthony has mentioned you." "Mentioned what?" Lena asked quietly. Evelyn set down her wine glass with a soft clink. "That you are becoming a problem. A liability, as I said." She turned to Anthony. "She is a liability, Anthony. You said you could control her." Anthony's jaw tightened. "I can. She is not going anywhere." "I can see why you might think that," Evelyn continued, standing. She gathered her purse, genuine leather, buttersoft. "But liabilities have a way of becoming dangerous. And dangerous women need to be removed from the equation." She moved toward the door, pausing beside Lena without making eye contact. "Your children are beautiful. I saw their photograph in your personnel file. Emma and Dylan. 8 and 6 years old, if I remember correctly." The words landed like ice water down Lena's spine. Evelyn left. The apartment door closed with a soft click. For 3 seconds, the only sound was the rain starting to hammer against the windows. Anthony's chair scraped backward. He stood, and the way he stood told Lena that her time for running was over. She moved toward the bedroom anyway, muscle memory of survival instinct, but he was faster. He grabbed her by the back of her shirt and spun her around. "What did you do?" he hissed. "I did nothing. I just got home." He grabbed her by the throat. His fingers closed around her neck like a vice, and lifted her off the ground until her feet dangled. Her vision exploded with white spots. She clawed at his wrist, but he was much stronger. He slammed the back of her head against the wall with force that cracked the drywall and sent plaster dust falling like snow. She could not breathe. Could not scream. Could not do anything but feel the pressure of his hand crushing her windpipe. He released her. She collapsed to the floor, gasping, her lungs burning. Before she could process, he kicked her ribs. Once. Twice. The pain was white-hot, blinding. She curled into a protective ball, but he was not finished. His fist connected with her left eye, and her vision went dark on that side, the world tilting into a nightmare of agony. "Get out," he said, breathing hard. "Get the hell out of my apartment." She could barely stand. She crawled toward the bedroom, toward her purse, her hand shaking so violently she could not grip anything. Her eye was already swelling shut, the lid heavy. She could taste blood. Her ribs screamed with each breath. She grabbed her jacket from the back of the chair. The $200 was in the pocket, crumpled bills she had been saving for the light bill. She pulled the worn prayer card from her nightstand, the one her grandmother had given her before she died. The one with the faded image of Satan and words in Italian she could no longer read but could not throw away. Anthony threw her purse after her, the zipper exploding open, papers and coins scattering across the kitchen floor. "Do not come back," he said. She stumbled out into the humid August night. The door slammed behind her. The sound of the lock clicking seemed louder than the thunder overhead. She could not see out of her left eye. The right side of her face was already throbbing, her throat closing in, each breath a ragged gasp. She walked for 21 minutes, disoriented, moving on instinct alone. The streets of Queens blurred past. A man asked if she needed help. She could not answer him. A woman crossed the street to avoid her. Then she saw it. Lights. Warm amber light spilling onto the sidewalk. A restaurant. The sign read Conti's in elegant script. She did not know why her feet carried her through that door. She only knew she could not stay on the streets. She could not go back to that apartment. The door chimed as she pushed through. The restaurant was elegant in a way that made her hyper-aware of her blood-soaked appearance. Black tablecloths. Soft lighting from candles. Servers in pressed white gloves moving silently between tables. A few late diners looked up, saw her swollen face, her torn uniform, and quickly looked away. At the mahogany bar, the bartender froze. A man sat on one of the leather stools, nursing a drink, and he turned slowly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples and the kind of face that belonged to someone accustomed to being obeyed. An expensive charcoal suit hung perfectly on his frame. His eyes were the color of a storm at sea, gray and penetrating and impossibly cold. She recognized power when she saw it. Blood dripped from her chin onto the marble floor. It made a small sound, a soft tap. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not mean to, I just needed." Her voice broke. She could not finish the sentence. The room tilted slightly. The light seemed very far away. The man stood. He moved around the bar with fluid grace, each movement controlled and deliberate. Up close, she could see a thin scar running from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone, silver in the low light. He was studying her the way someone might study a wounded animal. "You are coming with me," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, like something carved in stone. "I cannot," she whispered. "I am nobody. I do not need." "You are coming with me," he repeated. It was not a request. She collapsed forward. He caught her before she hit the marble. The last thing she felt was the warmth of his arms, the smell of expensive cologne and rain, and then the world went dark. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, in a small diner on Northern Boulevard, Anthony Marchetti sat across from Detective Frank Rizzo. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease. The clock on the wall read 9:22 p.m. Rain hammered against the windows. "She is with Rafael Conti," Anthony said, his voice shaking slightly. "The Rafael Conti." Frank Rizzo stirred his coffee slowly. He was Anthony's cousin, a fact that had proven useful for the past 2 years. So? You want me to spell it out? She is under his protection now. She has information. She knows. She knows what? Frank asked, finally looking up. Everything. She knows about my business, my contacts, my operation. She could destroy me. Frank set down his spoon. The clink of metal on ceramic was very loud. Then you have a problem, cousin. Because Rafael Conti does not give back what he has taken. And if she is there now, if he has decided to keep her, there is nothing either of us can do about it. Anthony's hands clenched into fists under the table. At that same hour, on the 42nd floor of a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Evelyn Blackwell sat in a white leather chair with a glass of wine in her hand. The city lights twinkled below her like captured stars. She was reviewing documents on her laptop, legal documents with very specific headers. Emergency custody petition. Parental fitness evaluation. Grounds for immediate removal. Her assistant had been thorough. The photographs of Lena's apartment were damaging, the mold in the bathroom, the broken window in the bedroom, the overflowing trash bins in the kitchen. The neighbors had been interviewed, though most remembered very little, which was fine because Evelyn only needed them to remember enough. She had 3 family court judges in her pocket. All 3 owed her favors. All 3 would sign whatever she put in front of them. She lifted her phone and made a call. "File it tomorrow morning," she said quietly. "Emergency hearing for Tuesday at 9. Judge Patricia Harmon will preside. Make sure the children are picked up by Wednesday morning and put them with the foster family I identified. A nice home upstate. Very clean. Very safe. Very far from their mother." She hung up and returned to her wine. In Rafael Conti's penthouse above the restaurant, Lena woke on a leather couch that cost more than she earned in a year. The room was dimly lit, decorated in shades of deep burgundy and cream. Soft. Expensive. Everything smelled like espresso and cigar smoke. Her left eye was bandaged. Her ribs were taped. Her throat felt like someone had poured gravel down it. Rafael sat across from her in a wingback chair, watching. He had changed out of his suit into an open white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His gold watch caught the light. His expression was unreadable. "How long was I unconscious?" she asked. Her voice came out as a rasp. 3 hours. My doctor treated your injuries. 2 cracked ribs, severe contusions, possible concussion. He paused. He also said if you had waited much longer to get medical attention, the internal bleeding could have become serious. Lena turned her head away. She could not bear to be looked at like this, broken and pathetic and grateful. "Who did this to you?" Rafael asked. "Why would you help me?" "I am nobody," she said, the words tumbling out. "I cannot pay you back. I have $200. That is everything I have left in the world." Rafael leaned forward. 3 days ago, you saved my nephew Oliver from being killed by a delivery truck outside PS 158 Elementary School. You did not ask for anything. You did not even ask his name. You threw yourself into the street and pulled him back to safety. You broke your fall on concrete to protect him. Your hands were bleeding. She stared at him. "You do not remember this," he said, not as a question. "I do not remember his name," she whispered. "His name is Oliver Conti. He is my nephew. 7 years old. He loves dinosaurs." Rafael's eyes were very still. "His mother called me that night and told me what happened." She described a woman in a cleaning uniform who risked her life without hesitation. Without knowing who the child belonged to. Without expecting anything in return. Lena's good eye glistened with tears. "Tell me everything," he said. So she did. The words came out in a flood, details she had kept locked inside for months. She told him about Marcus, her husband, who died of a heart attack at 34. She told him about the $85,000 in gambling debts that survived him, loan sharks who did not care that he was dead. She told him that the debts came due in 12 days, and if she did not pay, they would take her children. $85,000, she repeated, her voice hollow. I have 200. I am $84,800 short. She told him about the 3 jobs. The office cleaning, the night shift at a diner, the weekend housekeeping. She told him about moving in with Anthony because the rent was impossible on her own. She told him about the first time he hit her, how she thought it was a mistake, how she thought she could fix it. The police came twice, she said. Officer Rizzo is Anthony's cousin. The reports disappear. Rafael sat motionless, listening without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. The debt is gone, he said finally. I will handle it. I cannot let you. It is already done, he said. He lifted his phone and made a single call. The conversation was very brief, conducted in a low voice. Within 30 minutes, Vinny and Nino returned from handling the loan sharks. No violence. No need for it. A word from Rafael Conti was enough. The debt was erased. $85,000, gone. Lena could not cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus years ago. But something cracked open inside her chest, a space where hope had been boarding up the door. On Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, Lena received a notice from a process server. Emergency custody hearing. Judge Patricia Harmon presiding. She was being sued by Anthony Marchetti for custody of her children, and there were allegations of parental unfitness filed by an organization whose letterhead she did not recognize. She read the papers 3 times, her hands shaking so violently the words blurred. They are trying to take my children, she said to Rafael. He was already on the phone. Real strength is not found in never falling, but in always standing back up. Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, the rain fell in sheets against the courthouse steps, and Lena Winters stood alone in a borrowed coat that did not fit her frame. The fabric hung loose where she had shrunk from weeks of rationing food, stretched tight across her ribs where Anthony's fists had left bruises the color of storm clouds. Cold rain soaked through the wool, dripping down her neck, mixing with the metallic taste of fear that coated her tongue. The courthouse loomed above her, all gray stone and carved promises of justice, but the papers trembling in her hands told a different story. Emergency custody hearing. The words blurred as her vision swam. Judge Patricia Harmon presiding. She was being sued for custody of Emma and Dylan, her children, the 2 small bodies she had carried, nursed, protected with everything she had. And the motion alleged parental unfitness filed by an organization whose letterhead meant nothing to her except that it had money behind it, the kind of money that could afford lawyers in $5,000 suits. She looked at the worn prayer card in her trembling fingers, the one her grandmother had given her 20 years ago, now soft at the edges from being held 1,000 times. Real strength is not found in never falling but in always standing back up. The words blurred. She had fallen. She had fallen so far that she could no longer see the light above her. In her coat pocket, she had $200. 200. That was everything. After Rafael had erased the $85,000 debt, after he had paid for her new apartment, her food, her survival, she still had only $200 of her own. Not even enough to hire a lawyer. Not even enough to fight for her own children. Lena stepped into the courthouse lobby, and her wet shoes squeaked against the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. She climbed the stairs to the family court on the 3rd floor, each step heavier than the last. By the time she pushed through the heavy wooden doors to the courtroom, her heart was beating so fast she thought it might crack through her ribs. Evelyn Blackwell sat at the defense table like a general surveying a battlefield, her blonde hair swept back in a perfect twist, her navy suit tailored to her thin frame with the precision of someone who had never worried about the cost of anything. Two lawyers sat beside her in matching charcoal suits that probably cost more than Lena's entire rent for a year. They did not look at her. They did not need to. In their eyes, she was already defeated. Anthony Marchetti sat in the second chair, smirking, his arm in a sling from the night he had thrown her against the wall. He caught her eye and smiled. That smile said everything. I own you. You are nothing. Your children will be raised by people who matter. Judge Patricia Harmon entered, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the exhausted expression of someone who had seen too much cruelty in too small a room. She reviewed the motion without looking at Lena, her eye scanning the papers that Evelyn's lawyers had submitted. 3 pages of lies bound in blue covers that looked official, that looked like truth. Evelyn's lawyer stood, buttoned his jacket, and began to speak. Your Honor, we have filed a motion for emergency custody based on substantial evidence that the respondent, Ms. Elena Winters, is unfit to provide adequate care for her minor children. The evidence is compelling and clear. Ms. Winters works multiple jobs, indicating financial instability. She has a history of domestic violence in her home. She has been arrested for. I was not arrested, Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. Judge Harmon looked up, irritated. You will wait until you are recognized to speak, Ms. Winters. Evelyn's lawyer continued. Furthermore, we have police reports documenting incidents at her residence, filed by Officer Rizzo of the Queens Police Department. The pattern is clear. These children need stability. These children need a family that can provide for them. The lawyer sat down. He had taken 7 minutes to dismantle her life, and he had not even sweated through his suit jacket. Judge Harmon turned to Lena. Ms. Winters, do you have representation? Lena stood, her legs unsteady. No, Your Honor. I cannot afford. I will appoint a public defender for the next hearing. For today, you may present your case. She had no case. She had $200 and a prayer card and a voice that shook like a candle in the wind. She stood before the judge and tried to speak, tried to explain that the police reports were fabricated, tried to explain that she loved her children more than she loved breathing, but the words came out fractured and desperate and unconvincing. Judge Harmon raised her hand. Ms. Winters, I am granting temporary custody to the state pending further review. The children will be placed in foster care while this matter is investigated. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down like the closing of a coffin lid. Lena's world went silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of complete collapse, the sound of all her reasons for surviving being taken away in a single moment. She gripped the edge of the table in front of her, and for a second she thought about simply walking out, walking away, letting the current carry her somewhere she could no longer feel anything at all. Then the courtroom doors opened. Rafael Conti walked in like a man who had never been told no, like a man who moved through the world and the world rearranged itself to accommodate him. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the judge's car, and behind him came Vinny and Nino, their faces set in stone, and a lawyer carrying a briefcase so expensive it looked like it was made from the hide of something endangered. The lawyer moved to the front of the courtroom with the confidence of someone who had never lost a motion in his life. Your Honor, I am requesting to reopen these proceedings, he said, his voice crisp and clean as a blade. There is evidence of substantial fraud in the petitioner's filing. Judge Harmon stiffened. This hearing has been concluded. I understand, Your Honor. However, what I am about to present may require the recusal of this court. He opened his briefcase and laid documents across the judge's bench. Wire transfers. Bank records. Text messages between Evelyn Blackwell and Anthony Marchetti that read like a confession. Once we have custody of the children, she will have to comply with anything we ask. Financial incentives will follow. How long until Rizzo's next report? 1 more week. Everything is prepared. Photographs of Judge Patricia Harmon at an event sponsored by Evelyn's Foundation. A cancelled check from Evelyn's personal account to a court clerk named Melissa Torres for $15,000, with a memo line that said nothing but meant everything. Evelyn's face went white. Anthony's smirk dissolved. The lawyer's voice remained steady. Your Honor, Detective Rizzo falsified these police reports at the request of Mr. Marchetti. Ms. Blackwell has attempted to manipulate these proceedings through bribery and corruption. We have text message evidence, wire transfers, and the testimony of at least 3 court employees who witnessed these transactions. This is absurd, Evelyn said, standing, her voice sharp as broken glass. This is absolutely outrageous. I will not sit here and be slandered by. Rafael spoke for the first time, his voice dropping into the room like a stone into still water. Your Honor, Ms. Blackwell has bribed 3 judges in this courthouse over the past 4 years. We have wire transfers, recorded phone calls, and testimony from a court clerk she paid $15,000 to expedite false motions. I suggest you recuse yourself immediately and refer this matter to the FBI. The courtroom erupted. Evelyn's lawyers scrambled. Judge Harmon's face went the color of ash. Officers moved toward Rafael, then stopped because no one wanted to be the person who touched Rafael Conti first. By 11:02 a.m., the FBI had taken over the courtroom. By 1:44 p.m., they had picked up Evelyn Blackwell at her penthouse and Detective Rizzo at the precinct. By 2:15 p.m., the news feeds were running the headline, "Corruption Investigation Rocks Family Court. Local woman exonerated." But Anthony Marchetti had run. It took Rafael's men 6 hours to find him at a motel on the outskirts of Queens, packing a suitcase with cash and fake identification documents. When the FBI kicked in the door at 8:19 p.m., Anthony was still holding the identification, as if hoping it might make him disappear. The agents wore tactical gear and moved like ghosts through the small motel room. They did not need guns. They needed only authority and handcuffs and the absolute knowledge that Anthony Marchetti's world had ended. He woke from a dream of escape and found 7 guns aimed at his face. Anthony David Marchetti, you are under arrest for assault, fraud, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. He did not fight. He only trembled, his body shaking like a wounded animal backed into a corner, begging, crying, his voice breaking into sounds that were barely human. The camera flashes captured every second. By morning, the image of Anthony Marchetti being led away in handcuffs was playing on every news outlet in New York. Evelyn's perp walk came at 6:23 a.m. from her penthouse building, her silk robe replaced with an orange prison jumpsuit, her perfect hair unwashed and limp, her face twisted in rage and disbelief as photographers snapped photographs that would define her downfall forever. She screamed about lawyers and injustice and knowing important people. None of it mattered. The charges stacked like dominoes: conspiracy, bribery, fraud, obstruction of justice. The sentencing came 3 months later. Anthony Marchetti received 40 years in federal prison. Evelyn Blackwell received 35 years. The judge looked at them both with the cold gaze of someone who had finally been given permission to dispense actual justice. Too quick, too easy, too merciful would be to let you walk free, the judge said. You will spend the decades of your lives thinking about what you have done. Lena sat in the gallery beside Rafael, her hand trembling in his, and watched as the 2 people who had tried to destroy her were led away in chains. When the gavel came down for the final time, she did not feel relief. She felt something far more profound, the return of her children, the clearing of her name, and the absolute knowledge that she was no longer invisible, no longer nobody, no longer afraid. Rafael took her hand and stood. As they walked toward the courthouse doors, Vinny leaned toward Nino and whispered something that had not been true until this moment. In 3 years, I have never seen him like this. He is not the boss in this room anymore. He is just a man who loves her. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. 1 year later, the September evening carries the first real chill of autumn, and Lena Winters stands on the penthouse balcony 40 stories above the city, watching the lights begin to flicker on as darkness falls. The air tastes like rain on concrete. Below, the streets of New York spread out like a circuit board of light and motion, the sound of traffic muted by distance and glass, reduced to a soft hum like the heartbeat of something vast and living. She wears a simple black dress, elegant in its simplicity, and her left eye, the one that swelled shut that humid August night, shows no trace of what happened. The bruises on her throat have faded completely. Her skin is clear. Her hands, once rough and calloused from double shifts at diners, have softened. She is finally solvent. Rafael secured her a management position at one of his legitimate businesses 6 months ago, the salary $40,000 more than she ever earned in her entire life, $68,000 per year. Emma and Dylan are thriving in private school now, their uniforms pristine, their backpacks filled with books instead of the constant weight of her fear. They sleep safely inside this penthouse, in bedrooms with their own bathrooms, and they have not seen Anthony Marchetti or Evelyn Blackwell in 1 year, 3 months, and 14 days. She holds the worn prayer card in her hand, the edges soft from handling, the image of St. Catherine barely visible anymore. She thinks about that night, the delivery truck, the child running, her hand reaching without thinking, without knowing that this small act would change everything. She thinks about stumbling into the restaurant, blood dripping onto marble, and the man in the tailored suit saying words that should have terrified her, "You are coming with me." Instead, he had saved her. He had buried the people trying to destroy her. And now, standing here in the darkness, she understands something she did not understand before. She had saved him first. Footsteps approach from inside the penthouse, measured and deliberate. Rafael emerges onto the balcony, his frame silhouetted against the light spilling from the living room. He wears an open-collar white shirt, cashmere sweater draped across his shoulders like armor he no longer needs. He has been quieter lately, more distant, though his protection has never wavered. In a year, he has not raised his voice to her once. He has learned her favorite coffee order. He reads bedtime stories to Oliver every single night, his deep voice softening as he recounts adventures of talking animals and magical forests, and the men who work for him have learned not to interrupt during those sacred hours between 7 and 8 o'clock. Nino mentioned it once to Vinny. In 23 years, I have never seen him sit beside a child like that, like the rest of the world could burn and he would not notice. You have been avoiding me, Lena says, not turning from the view. Her voice is steady now, the trembling gone. Rafael steps closer, his movements careful, like a man approaching something precious that might break. I needed to be certain, he says. His voice comes out deep and solid like an oath. I needed to know that you stayed because you wanted to, not because you had nowhere else to go. And now, she asks. Now I need to tell you something. He stands beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers, and the city lights shimmer across the darkness between them. That night you collapsed against my bar, reaching for that prayer card. I told myself I was helping you because you saved Oliver. That was a lie I told myself to make sense of what I felt. Lena turns to face him. I have spent 15 years building an empire, Rafael continues. Every decision based on strategy, on power, on control. When my brother Dante betrayed me, when he tried to tear everything apart, I chose the family over mercy because that is what a boss does. You do what is required. You do not feel. You do not break. He pauses. The wind carries the sound of sirens far below, the endless soundtrack of the city. But when I saw you that night, bleeding, broken, when I watched you reach for that card like it was the only real thing left in the world, something shattered in me. For the first time since Dante's death, I felt something I thought I had lost the ability to feel. I chose something for myself instead of for the Empire. That choice was you. Lena's eyes fill with tears. Saving you was never duty, Rafael says. It was never mercy. It was the first moment I chose my own heart over everything else. Over the business, over the power, over the code I swore to live by. You changed me. Why are you telling me this now? Lena asks, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. Because you are free now, he says. You do not owe me anything. You could walk away tomorrow and build the life you deserve. You have the education, the money, the strength. I need you to know that that was always your choice. Not your obligation. Never your obligation. Lena steps closer. She takes his hand. His palm is warm, the skin calloused from years of holding guns and making decisions, but his fingers tremble slightly as they close around hers. This is only the second time she has seen him show emotion, and it strikes her with the force of a blade through her chest. "I am not going anywhere," she says. "I am not going anywhere because I do not want to. Not because I have to." They kiss as the city lights shimmer below them, millions of lives playing out in those glittering windows, most of them never knowing that above their heads, a woman who once had $200 and a prayer card now stands at the highest point in the building beside a man who chose love over empire. But what neither of them knows yet, what will be revealed in 3 weeks, is that Rafael has already begun liquidating his interests in the family business. He has been meeting with lawyers and accountants and federal agents who offered him something in exchange for his testimony, immunity, witness protection available if needed, though he does not plan to need it. He is stepping back from the mafia life entirely. He is going legitimate. He is going to build something with his hands instead of his power. And 3 weeks from now, when he tells her this, Lena will understand that he did not just save her life. He rebuilt his own. Inside the penthouse, Emma and Dylan sleep peacefully in their beds, their nightmares gone. The worn prayer card rests on the nightstand in Lena's bedroom, and tomorrow morning when she wakes, she will look at it and remember that strength was never about never falling. Strength was about standing back up when everything in you screamed to stay down. Strength was about reaching for something sacred when you had nothing else left to reach for. Strength was about the quiet moment when a broken woman and a powerful man chose each other, not because they had to, but because they finally understood that love was the only empire worth building. The rain begins to fall again, soft at first, then harder, pattering against the glass doors. The city glitters through the downpour, eternal and indifferent and beautiful. And on a balcony 40 stories above the street, 2 people stand together in the darkness, and the sky, at long last, is clearing. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, like and share this video with the people you love. Every comment you leave is a precious source of motivation. We wish all of you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace.